Welcome, curious souls, to Magically Different Mouse. I'm Katie, and you may have noticed this is a bit different from my usual vlogs because I'm not in a Disney park right now. Actually, this is filmed about a week before our most recent trip to Disneyland Paris, because if you go on the Disney groups online, there are questions that get asked again and again and again, and one of the most common is, what should I pack for my Disney trip? So I'm just going to highlight a few of the things that we've found really helpful on trips to Disneyland Paris and that we'll be preparing to take with us next time around. Now, I will say on this video, I'm not going to be doing really obvious things like your passports. Please take your passport if you're coming from the UK or another country that's not France. I'm also not going to do things like underwear and deodorants and toothpaste, because I like to think everyone watching this video knows that they should be packing underwear and deodorant and toothpaste. Please pack deodorant, underwear and toothpaste. You're going to need them, believe me, even if it's cold when you're out there. Now, one thing I will say is that the trip we're about to go on is in November, so there are some things that we're not taking this time that I would be considering taking if we were going in the summer. So we'll talk about those a little bit later on. So I'm going to start off with some of the bits that we have found particularly helpful for keeping our devices alive when we're out in Paris. Now, you will notice that when you're out there, you are going to be on your phone a fair amount. This may be because you're using the Disneyland Paris app, and that is extremely helpful. Download it before you go if you haven't already. It will be really handy for your trip with things like queue times, if you need to book Premier Pass, if you want to do mobile order, booking dining reservations, all that kind of fun stuff. It's all done for the Disneyland Paris app. But also you might want your phone for things like, you know, taking your photos and sharing them with your friends to make them incredibly jealous of the fact that you're in Disney and they're not. Was that just me? Maybe that's just me. Anyway, but moving on from that, let's start off with the things that you'll need to keep your devices live. So I'm going to start off with chargers for your room. Now, while you need to keep your device active while you're in the parks, and I will come on to that in a bit, you'll also need to charge devices every night. And while all the rooms do have USB plugs, they have plug sockets obviously, a lot of people now have more devices than they might have plugs. So we have found very helpful taking something like this. This is a USB hub. And what it is, it's got a couple of USB-C sockets on there and a couple of USB-A's. And we use this because we have things like both our phones, we'll have this camera, that we'll need to charge when we're out there, laptops, tablets, smartwatches, anything like that, you're going to need to keep plugged in. And the really handy thing about this is that you can have 4 devices charging at once. Something like this one as well, and this is an Anchor brand, but we found this Anchor one really good because it has USB-Cs and USB-A's, and we can even charge laptops from it. So it's a really handy one to have. So alongside your power bank, you're going to need a French plug adapter. This is probably stating the obvious, but it feels worth repeating. Obviously, in continental, power is different to what we have over here in the UK, where I'm from. It's also different to what you'll have if you're from, say, the States or Australia. So you will need to have the correct power device. Now, you can just get an adapter, which you attach onto the plug from wherever you're from and then plug into the sockets over there. What we've actually preferred to do is grab a cable that plugs straight into our hub that has the required European power connector there. We've just found this handy because it means that we're not faffing around plugging adapters into adapters. We've also found that it's a little bit safer if you're charging multiple devices at once, because going for an adapter can always be a little bit, how shall I put it? We don't want to set anything on fire in our hotel room. It's extremely unlikely, please don't panic, but we're slightly paranoid, so we prefer to go with this approach. Now, of course, when you're using devices in the park, you might end up running out of battery, and that's when something like this could be your new best friend. This is a portable power bank. Again, this is an Anchor brand. We found their stuff pretty good, but if you've got a preference for another brand, go with that. The ones that you can kind of like magnetise onto the back of your phone can be pretty good, really helpful. This isn't, you do need a cable to connect it. So if you do get a power bank like this, make sure you've got the cables to go with it. In fact, make sure you've got your charging cables all together, because, they're handy. If you do forget power banks or cables, you can normally buy a few little bits and bobs like that in some of the shops on the site, or if you really need to, you could hop on the metro and go to Val d'Europe, which is the next stop down on the metro line. That's a massive shopping centre. They'll have pretty much everything you need there. But we prefer not to head off site, so we like to take in stuff like this with us. Now, if you ever stayed in a Disneyland Paris hotel room, you might know that the walls aren't always the thickest. And if you end up with noisy neighbours or even people who just snore a bit, you might be able to hear them through the walls. That's why we've found something like this really handy. This is essentially a white noise maker. You can choose different sorts of noise on the top. We prefer to have it on ocean wave, but you can choose whatever you like. It just rechargeable, we can see there, so I haven't got to worry about the batteries running out. We find this really handy. It just helps create a quieter atmosphere at night so that we can nap. Also, if you have napping children who you might want to have a nap during the middle of the day, why the hell not? You're going to need something like this probably to help block out the sounds from the other rooms, because otherwise you probably will hear the people going up and down the corridors. Right, so there's more of the device things that we like to pack. Obviously, we do take our phones with us. We're going to have a camera with us. You probably don't need that unless you're vlogging, but it's an option. You might want to take things like laptops with you as well, although I wouldn't recommend carrying them on the parts because it's just extra weight you've got to carry. So I'm going to move on to things like toiletries and medicines you might want to consider packing. This bit is particularly important also if you're differently abled, so if you've got medical conditions you need to manage, it's definitely worth making sure you've got everything you need. Now, the first thing I want to mention, and I haven't got it out for, privacy reasons, is prescription medicines. If you have prescription medicines, make sure you pack them. Take them in the original packaging, and if you can, take some spares and take a copy of your prescription with you. The reason I say that is because if, say, something happens, your flight on the way back gets delayed, there's problems with the ferries, all sorts of things could happen. It means you've actually got extra pills so you're not worrying about running out. Also, if you have a prescription with you, you can in theory get your prescription filled out there in France as well. So it's just good to have that. Do take them in the original packaging if you can with the labels. I've never had issues taking medicine into France. They seem pretty happy about the entire thing. But it's better so they know that it has been prescribed for you, just in case you do get stopped. Oh, and the other thing about prescription medicines, which I nearly forgot, but I won't, is if you are flying, take them in your carry-on. Please do not put them in your checked luggage. You'd like to think your bags won't go missing, and chances are they won't. But they might, because, stuff happens. So if that's the case, you do not want to be parted from your prescription medicine. So put anything like that in your carry-on. And I would say anything that you deem absolutely essential, put it in your carry-on if you can. So also things like devices. Put them in your carry-on. That's way if your bag does go AWOL somewhere in the process, at least you've got those essential items with you. So, what toiletries might you want to think about taking with you for Disneyland Paris? The first thing I will say is painkillers. Now, these obviously are over-the-counter job because I've got codeine in, but this goes as well if you just take paracetamol, ibuprofen. Please take them with you. Even if you're a super healthy person who doesn't get much in the way of aches and pains, I will promise you that with a load of overstimulation in a Disney park, with a load of walking, a load of steps and a load of standing, if nothing else, your feet will thank you if you have some painkillers on hand. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Paracet or ibuprofen, I can just buy it if I need it, right? Well, you can, but we used over here in the UK, and I think it's the same over in the States as well, to be able to pick up stuff like that, in a corner shop in the supermarket. If you go to Walt Disney World, you can buy a lot of stuff like that in the resort shops, although obviously they cost a little bit extra. That is not the case in Disneyland Paris. In France, it is actually illegal to sell any sort of medicines outside of a pharmacy. So, normal paracetamol, normal ibuprofen, if you run out of it and you need it in France, the nearest place you're going to be able to pick it up to Disneyland Paris is Val d'Europe at the pharmacy there. And of course, they do have slightly limited hours because it's a pharmacy and you have to travel to get there, so it's not ideal. So please, take some painkillers with you. I've seen so many times in the online groups people saying, how do I get hold of paracetamol? How do I get ibuprofen? Just buy it and take it with you. If you don't need it, result. Then you just keep it at home, sadly, for another day. But take a pack with you just in case. And that also goes, if you have little ones, take things like Calpol with you as well, because again, you're not going to be able to buy that on the resort. You're going to have to go to Val d'Europe to get it. Now, one thing I will say in dire straits when you're in the parks is that if you really have a super bad headache, your back's playing up, whatever, go to first aid and they can give you a single dose, but they will take down your details and you can't just keep going in there to top up your painkillers. They will stop giving them to you after a while. So don't take advantage, that's not nice. So yeah, take it with you and then you'll be covered in the case that you need them. And while we're talking about painkillers, meet your new best friend when you're doing a trip. This is pain relieving gel. This is actually a ibuprofen gel with menthol in as well, so it's cooling. There's all sorts of ones on the market. You can get a Voltarol, you know the score. These are incredibly helpful for rubbing into, say, the bottom of your feet at the end of the park day. If you get a tight neck because you've been carrying on a bag all day, this could be your best friend. And much in the same way as the paracetamol and the ibuprofen tablets, you can't just go and buy this in a shop. It has to come from a pharmacy in France. So take it with you. Right, I hope everyone can still hear me because Baymat's just decided to kill my microphone. And here he goes again. No, baby, you can't have it. I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely don't pack your cat. That's been my main advice. Side note, only service animals are of course allowed in the parks. So sadly, your feline friends probably won't be very welcome. Right, here's a little nifty trick that we've picked up quite recently actually for pain relief, and this is Epsom salt rub. Now Epsom salts are great for soaking tired muscles, and I see a lot of people recommending Epsom salt soaks for their feet at the end of the day, which is great, and if you can do it, absolutely do it. The problem is it's a bit of a faff because you've either got to have a basin or fill up a bit of the bath in the room, etc. But this is it in the rub-on version, so you just have to rub it into your muscles. So it's a bit like the other pain relieving cream. You can put it on as many times a day as you like. It isn't that easy to get hold of in the UK. That's the only thing I found. I think I imported this one from the States, but I was able to pick it up on Amazon. So would highly recommend this for aching and tired feet. And speaking of feet, blister plasters. Definitely take some blister plasters with you. People do thousands upon thousands of steps a day at Disney. You will be walking a lot more than you are used to when you're in the parks. It's just life at a Disney park. And even though they might be the most well-worn shoes in the world, you might have the best socks in the world, but I can guarantee you if they're ever going to cause a hot spot or a blister, it will be when you're in a Disney park. So these guys are your best friend. Normal plasters will just bunch up and stick. They don't really do a very good job for blisters or on your feet, but these guys will stick through pretty much anything. Again, these are the Compeed ones, and this is a multi-pack of different sizes, which we found quite helpful to have because then you're kind of covered. But I would definitely recommend packing some of these and taking them with you into the parks as well. And if you have little ones, ask them about their feet regularly if they're getting hot spots or anything like that. It's better to put one of these on early than it is for a massive blister to form and then for them to be miserable. But even with these on, you can normally cope with the parks, even with big blisters. Now this one, it may not be essential for a lot of people, but we've found it very helpful. This is a anti-blister stick, so it's essentially an anti-rub cream. And it comes in a kind of like roll-on stick form. That's very good for rubbing on your feet, so if you want to get not if you want to get blisters, duh, you don't want to get blisters. If you want to prevent blisters, you would want to use that. But it can also be rubbed on other parts of your body where you might be prone to chafing. So I'm not a slim lady. The chub rub is a real thing. That can really help prevent it. Probably less of an issue in the winter when, you know, you're more likely to be in trousers and stuff like that. But if you're prone to anything rubbing on anywhere else on your body, things like that can be good. If not, Body Glide, all sorts of creams like that are also probably not a bad thing to invest in. Now, next thing to consider, the Disney parks are effectively for the thousands of people, all of who are running around. They are probably not washing their hands properly. Essentially, a Disney park is like a giant petri dish of dirt germs, and it's really easy to get ill if you're not careful. So things that I would recommend taking: hand sanitizer. I know we're well past the great pandemic, you know, thankfully, but this can still be really handy for preventing you getting bugs and stuff. So definitely would recommend using it, maybe after you get off rides, but particularly just before you eat. And speaking of eating, you might also want to invest in some antibacterial wet wipes. These can be really handy for things like wiping down hands, faces, but also wiping things like tables and stuff like that. If you've got a bit of a mucky table and the cast members haven't cleared it yet. So if you are on a quick service and the table's still a bit mucky, wipe it down with one of these and that will at least clean the table up for you, and it will be much less germy and you're hopefully less likely to get ill. Another thing you may want to consider to help you prevent getting ill is some sort of multivitamin. Now, you can get healthier food in the Disney parks. It doesn't all have to be burgers and hot dogs, etc. But even so, you're going to be on the run, you're going to be getting up early, probably going to bed late. You're probably not going to be eating as well as you might do otherwise. And like I mentioned in my previous point, The Disney parks are a massive petri dish of germs. So grabbing something like a multivitamin can at least just help give your immunity a little bit of a fighting chance, just in case you do happen to pick up something when you're around the park. Now these are the ones that you dissolve in water. I generally have them in the hotel room in the morning before we go out for the park day. But you can have just normal tablet ones that you can just swallow if you'd rather not do the whole dissolving in water thing. I also find though dissolving to water makes sure I actually drink some sensible fluid first thing in the morning, which is great because I tend to live on Coke Zero when I'm at Disneyland Paris, which is not healthy. Probably don't do that. But at least I get a little bit of vitamins with this as well. Now the next one, I thought to be honest, was just a me problem. But I've seen lots of posts in the online Facebook groups of people reporting similar issues, and that is that having very chapped lips when they're at the Disney parks. I think again, especially in the winter months when it's kind of like, it can be that very cold, dry air, it just kind of like sucks all the moistures out your lips. And again, you might not be staying as hydrated as you should. Do stay hydrated, please do that. But you might not, and it can lead to lip damage. So I would strongly recommend taking some sort of lip balm with you. I really like this one, which is the O'Keefe, it's not one in the focus. This is the O'Keefe's Lip Repair. It's the same people that do like the working hand stuff, if you've seen the TV adverts. I found this one really good for helping to prevent damaged lips. The other things I'd also recommend taking is a more medicated one, just in case they get really bad. So this is Blistex. Again, choose whatever brand you prefer. And I am very prone to cold sores. They're horrible things, and any sort of trauma to my lips can often turn into a cold sore. So just in case the worst happens, I would also recommend taking with you Zavirax or a similar cold sore cream medication. You can also get cold sore patches, which you might prefer, but something like that. If anyone in your family is prone to cold sores, do take this with you. Again, it's not something you're going to be able to pick up in the Disney parks at all. You would probably have to go to Val Europe to try and find anything like this. And I found that the medications vary a lot depending on what country you're in. So if you're used to having something like this, say from here in the UK, I would recommend taking some with you. Now, the next topic I'm going to talk about might be a little sensitive, but we need to talk about it. Stomach upsets. It can really happen when you're in a Disney park. Again, you're running around like there's no tomorrow. You're probably eating foods you shouldn't. You might be eating at a different time. The food might be richer than you're used to. You might pick up something, etc. Essentially, a bit of a digestive upset is not unlikely when you're in a Disney park. So again, we would recommend taking something with you, like some antacids. We quite like the Gaviscon Double Action here. But again, there's loads of different ones on the market. Choose whatever you prefer. We quite like these ones because they pretty much cover everything that could happen with your stomach. Heartburn can happen, especially if you're eating a lot of rich food that you're not used to. So I would pack that with you. And if you're prone to IBS, I'd also recommend packing something like Buscopan. That is an anti-cramping medicine. Essentially, it stops bad stomach cramps in your intestines. You should only take it if you have been diagnosed with IBS, so don't just pop some if you think you might have a bit of a stomach cramp. But they're really handy things to have if you have. And unfortunately, both Ken and I do have IBS. So for us, it's kind of a travel essential at this point. So the final things I'll talk about in this video are things for folks like me who are very prone to back and joint pain. Again, I've said it a lot in this. You're going to be standing a lot, you're going to be walking a lot. There are stairs. There's a surprising amount of stairs. There are lifts available for people who really need them before anyone panics. So if you're in a wheelchair, use mobility aids, that kind of thing. But my joint pain is not to the point when I typically need to use a mobility aid, but I can guarantee it will flare up when I'm in a Disney park. So the first thing you might want to think about if you have joint pain is bring with you supports. If you ever use them for any reason, bring them with you. This is a back support. I am very, very prone to lower back pain. I've been very prone to lower back pain pretty much as long as I can remember, to be honest. Certainly since my late teenage years on, and it will flare up when I'm at Disney. So bringing a support with you is a great idea. That is the same though if you are prone to foot pain, knee pain, your ankles, you occasionally have a dodgy elbow, wrist pain, anything like that. If you think you might need a support or you occasionally wear one, bring it with you to Disney. If you don't need it, great, fine, it just stays in the suitcase and does its own thing. But you'll be much better off having it than you are not. And the same goes for mobility aids if you only use them occasionally, so things like walking sticks and crutches. Bring them with you. If you don't end up using them, fantastic, but you're much better off having it than you are than being without. Disney will rent to you things like wheelchairs, but you're not going to be able to rent from them back supports and walking sticks. Is just not something they offer. So definitely take stuff like that with you if you need it. So here's the other thing that we found very helpful for any sort of joint problems, and this is KT tape. This is a kind of like physio tape, so you just tape it in a specific way around different joints when they're injured, and it's to provide support. It's one of those things that, you know, I'm not entirely sure how it works. You just put a bit of tape on yourself, but it really does, so it's really handy to have. Ken has problems with his knees, and he finds this very essential for his knee pain. And obviously, again, he's going to be walking a lot at Disney, so he's going to need the KT tape. The nice thing about KT tape, though, is that you can pack like a much smaller roll than that. That's a really industrial roll. And then you've got it there should you end up with an injury of some description. So it's a bit like having an emergency tubey grip or support, but one that can be essentially used in almost any joint in your body, because there are taping methods for KT tape for almost any part of you. One thing I will caution for KT tape, especially if you've not used it before, is look at what's in the adhesives if you've got any sort of skin sensitivity. I don't think you can use it if you've got a latex allergy, sadly, but double check what you can. We've found the KT Tape Pro to be good and not been too irritating on the skin, but your mileage may vary. Just try out what you prefer. And it's very easy to look up online for different taping methods as and when you need them. So yeah, it's a really handy thing to pop in a bag. If you don't take something like KT tape, I would recommend popping in your luggage maybe something like a cohesive bandage. So say someone sprains an ankle or whatever, there's tram lines in Disney, it could happen. You've got something that you can use for a support, but that's why we found it particularly helpful. So those are the main things that I just wanted to throw into this video. Now there are other things that you should take if you're way of clothing just for the season. Now we're obviously going to November, so we're going to be packing warmer stuff, but it could be a really mild spell, so layers effectively are your best friend. Unless you're going in like the peak of summer or the peak of winter, so January, February, take layers, because it's going to be much easier to layer up and down then to whatever you need temperature-wise. Regardless of what the temperature's supposed to be, take really good socks. This is not the time for your little fashion socks. Big, thick, chunky. They may be unfashionable, no one cares. Wear decent socks, you will need them, because again, it will help prevent blisters. And your feet are going to get hot and sweaty. Even in the middle of the winter, they're going to get hot and sweaty. Now, in the summer, I would probably be thrown onto this list things like sunscreen, obviously. That can be an issue even in the winter if you're sensitive to the sun. Some people are very sensitive regardless. If you've got sunny days and you're going to be outside a lot, it might be worth packing it regardless. Other things is like, so cooling apparatus, fans, you might want to think about taking a fan, cooling towels. They're really popular over in the Florida parks where it's, you know, absolutely sweltering the vast majority of the year. Not so much of an issue for Paris, but it can get pretty sweltering, especially as the peak of summer. So it might be something to consider. Obviously for winter, you might also want to think about packing things like gloves and scarves and hats, because you might need those extra layers to keep warm. And particularly think about it if you've got any sort of conditions like Raynaud's, where you're very sensitive to the cold. Pack your really thick gloves, you might need them. One thing I'll say about gloves though is if you can, get them so you can got the fingers that you can use a touch screen with, because as I mentioned earlier, you're probably going to be on your phone a little bit. And it is much easier to be able to do it with your gloves on than having to take them on and off every single time you need to use your phone. So that one's worth thinking about. But yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything we've missed? Let us know in the comments. What do you take to Disneyland Paris that we haven't thought of here? Everyone's got their own thing that they prefer to take with them, and we're always happy for suggestions. So do please leave them in the comments. You might really help someone else out. If you like this video, please do subscribe and hit the alerts bell so you'll be told when we next upload a video. And please also come and visit our blog, which is at magicallydifferentmouse.com. That's all one word run together. And thank you so much for this video. Look out for more videos coming soon. See you real soon.